section. Uh-oh. Little low blow from Andy Kaufman.
In my younger days, when I could run a little faster and jump a little higher, if you asked me to hit the blacktop for some pickup basketball, my answer was almost certainly an enthusiastic. But nowadays, and after suffering through a few election cycles, if asked whether I care to participate in watching something like a political debate or convention on TV, my answer will almost certainly be
whatever.
Of course, these are two completely different activities. One is active, and the other is passive. One is a sport, and the other a spectator sport. But they have one thing in common. A presidential election and an afternoon of basketball are both games. And like Andy Kaufman, the performance artist who inspired REM's Man on the Moon, you can take them both as seriously as you choose. But enthusiasm tends to wane over time, particularly concerning the passive acceptance of the stories that we've grown tired of and that we no longer take seriously. While it's a bit easier to retain enthusiasm over the things you actively participate in, the spectator sport of media consumption is vulnerable to the slow creep of incredulity. As much as lead singer and songwriter Michael Stipe is talking about Kaufman and the power of beliefs, it's also a story about the effect of time on those beliefs. A smaller point that is less appreciated concerning this song. In Man on the Moon, the expression of yeah serves as the refrain and a subtle rhetorical device. The pitch shift in Stipes' yeahs sounds a bit like the shifting enthusiasm that happens in people regarding the things they experience. And if it wasn't intentional, let's call it serendipity, a happy musical accident. That could most certainly be the case. Either way, this is a pretty cool thing to happen in a song that makes ambiguous the distinction between the magical and the intentional.
Oh, yeah, they want reality, but you will hear none. They'd rather exaggerate a little fiction.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real? And other people have remembered, and they say, hey, don't worry, this is just a ride. And we kill those people.
Quick aside, a Wikipedia entry mentions that Stipes' use of yeah was a playful reference to Kurt Cobain's frequent use of it at the time. The article didn't cite its source for the claim, so I wasn't able to cross-reference it, so take it with a grain. Anyway, since we're talking about the meaning behind a work of art, the interpretation that follows is speculative, so this will be largely opinion-driven, but care will be taken to support my suspicions. Since I have enough doubts as to whether or not I'm reading this song right, if you agree or disagree, I wouldn't mind hearing from you. I own a copy of this album, but am in no way an REM expert. I'll defer to anyone with additional detail or info to share, provided you watch enough of this video to provide a fair enough response. The pitch of the yeah refrains in the opening verse of Man on the Moon happens to be faster, more enthusiastic, when paired with the lines about playing games. The slower, seemingly more fatigued pitch falls on the lines that talk about watching games. Be it choice or coincidence, this is interesting. The pitch change affects how you can interpret the lines. The faster tempo suggests a greater enthusiasm relative to the slower tempo that suggests waning enthusiasm, almost exhaustion. Whether that was Michael Stipe's intention or not, who knows? But it sure works. And so does the rest of this song, lyrically, musically, and thematically. To drive the point home, we'll review some of these yeahs and how they apply a slight emotional shift using pitch. Our first verse gives us Mott the Hoople and the Game of Life. Mott the Hoople was a buck, but might be better known as an English rock band from the 1970s. Their Wikipedia entry mentions that David Bowie gave them a boost, writing their first hit and producing the 1972 album it appeared on called All the Young Dudes, a song that clearly has Bowie's influence all over it. I was not familiar with this group, but having reviewed footage and stills in preparation for this, it's pretty clear that they were flamboyant enough to serve as Stipes' first lyrical reference to showmanship and spectacle. The Game of Life most likely refers to the board game, not real life. We can assume it refers to the board game by comparing it to the official lyrics from REM's lyric video on their YouTube page. This shouldn't be confused with the original music video, which, like the album's liner notes, did not feature printed lyrics. All of the lyrics in this video have been checked against the lyrics from REM's official YouTube channel, which appears to be the best thing we have to go by. As you can see in this still, life was capitalized, making it a proper noun, meaning it probably refers to the popular board game. So this first line brings us to a show to watch and a game to play. And this pairing has the important effect of differentiating, but also associating spectacle with play. The things we see versus the things we do. This will be important to consider because of its implications. When we're participating in a game or play, we are aware of its performative, illusory nature, precisely because we are players. We know it's a game, and we know we're playing a role. And even if we choose to play hard, we never permanently mistake the game for reality. But shows and spectacles, as opposed to games, can more easily be mistaken as real, because the authenticity of the performers can be concealed from the audience. This is where belief comes in, and serves to turn spectacle into reality. And the most believable spectacles, and people, are of course the ones that present themselves as genuine. Being a believer stands the risk of being made a sucker. Andy Kaufman in the wrestling match. When it comes to spectacle, few can top Andy Kaufman, the personification of this song and the subject of the 1999 film of the same name. Channel 11's 5th episode, entitled Seriously Silly, covered that film and the personal/societal implications of blurring fantasy with reality. Though its earlier work and the audio was less than pristine, it's worth checking out as a companion piece to this, or if you enjoyed the film. Monopoly, 21, checkers, and chess. Here's our first instance of a higher pitch in the refrain, which seems to express an increased enthusiasm, either intentionally or accidentally. These more enthusiastic yeahs in this line are reserved for the games that you can play, as opposed to the spectacles and games that are played for you or on you. In terms of entertainment, playable games enjoy an edge over pure spectacle, at least among young people. And if you don't think so, try asking a Hollywood executive how the video game industry has managed to eat their lunch in recent years. Mr. Fred Blassie in a breakfast mess. With this line, we return to spectacle. Fred Blassie, known as Classy Freddie Blassie, was an entertainment wrestler that worked some TV gigs and gimmicks with Andy Kaufman. This line refers to a short film Kaufman did with Blassie called My Breakfast with Blassie. The film itself functions as cinematic kayfabe, an hour-long work, as they say in the business, and a parody of the 1981 masterpiece, My Dinner with Andre, an excellent film, worthy of being covered at some point down the road. Let's play Twister, let's play Risk. Again, two popular or once popular playable games, accompanied by the slightly more enthusiastic series of yeahs. I'll see you in heaven, if you make the list. Regardless of your feelings toward the claims of organized religion, it's hard not to consider them as stories, since their fantastic claims beg our scrutiny. Because the veracity of religious claims is debatable, its claims serve as the most provocative cultural example for Stipe to cherry pick. The proposition of eternal damnation, vis-a-vis John 3:16, must be put to debate if we're questioning beliefs. Since religion delivers some of the longest-running stories of human history, these final yeahs are rightly paired with a less than enthusiastic downpitch. Here, as the final yeahs of the song's opening drift out, Stipe seems to present religious stories in particular as ones to be endured more than enjoyed. Heaven? Yeah. Whatever, man.
The Lord don't care about who's got the biggest house.
My grandpops was always coming at us with that religion. And every time, it would go in one ear and out the other.
Conspiracies. Everyone believes in one, whether they admit it or not. The only thing that differs between them is the subject and scale of the theory. And while subject and scale is important, some people are willing to openly own their theories and suspicions, or at least express their doubts about popular narratives, because they haven't allowed the media or other people's opinion to scare away their disbelief with the spooky label of conspiracy theorist. What conspiracy theories have in common is that the person holding the theory or hypothesis does not have all of the information needed to fully support a counterclaim, and this includes most insiders as well. And this unifies all conspiracy theories onto a spectrum of plausibility that varies depending on the quality of evidence that supports or denies their claims. To avoid engaging with reasonable skepticism, those who are skeptical of skepticism itself run an end-around play that goes something like this. You think this, therefore you must be that. And by that, they mean conspiracy theorist, of course. And because you're that, I don't have to bother considering or even listening to anything you have to say. Translating this formula even further, it sounds more like, leave me to my superior, institutionally approved, popular mindset. This mindset is the soothing balm of its own beliefs, and it conveniently manages to never upset power.
And the devil will drag you under by the sharp lapel of your checkered coat. Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, you're rocking the boat.
Playing devil's advocate, the safe, popular mindset isn't necessarily wrong. Faith and skepticism are both double-edged swords. Like everything else, it depends. It always depends. And if we wish to become more than information eaters, there's no way around critically considering the stories we are being fed. Responsibility means always having to decide everything ourselves, and the conclusions we reach will necessarily be colored by the previous information we've encountered, along with our proclivities, all of which makes us uniquely faithful or skeptical and human. And it's cool to see where people land. The fact that the conclusions around the things and stories we encounter are highly speculative and debatable is what makes life so damn frustrating. But it also makes life fun and worth living. In American culture, thanks to media, pundits, and PR specialists, opinion is dismissed as conspiracy theory when it undermines or refutes a story propagated by the institutions of power. When opinions relate to matter of little consequence, they're allowed to remain as acceptable, viable alternatives. You're allowed, even encouraged, to share opinions about silly little things. But try penetrating any deeper, and at best, no favors will be done. A fact which should be accepted by content creators dispassionately. The machine can't be expected to act against its own interest.
Andy, did you hear about this one?
The pre-chorus section of Man on the Moon finds Stipe calling out to Kaufman, wherever he is. Is Andy in the spirit realm, or still on Earth, somewhere? Kaufman cried wolf so many times in life that there was some heavy doubt among fans as to whether his death was legit or le-joke. Of course, this uncertainty that Kaufman enthusiastically embraced made him the logical case study sample for this song.
You just give me a pair of boxing gloves and I'll knock you out again. I'll knock you out every time, Lawler. Haven't you learned your lesson? You're so dumb. You're so dumb.
The first line of this pre-chorus is important because it tells the listener that every example that follows this line in the next chorus and the final two verses should indeed be considered as potentially nothing more than gags, grifts, and hustles. Just in case you didn't get that impression from the first verse alone, it reinforces and makes clear the theme of the song and removes any doubt that this song is about doubt and belief, two things that go together hand in glove. It sets up the rest of the song quite well.
Now, Andy, did you hear about this one?
These words read like Michael checking in on Andy, comparing notes, and updating him with the various stories floating around planet Earth, or even the rumors concerning his death. Perhaps our singer wonders and is asking Andy on our behalf, are there still games in the afterlife, buddy? And are you still playing them? Of course, it could also simply serve as a reference to the rumors that Andy might have faked his death and was messing with us after all. As in, are you f***ing with us, Andy? Going a step further is the idea that this line could be Michael telling the spirit of Andy that some of the folks down here still believe you're playing them. Either way, if you've ever loved and lost anyone close to you and believe in life beyond this life, you'll find yourself wondering what they might be doing right now and if they're happy. You might even ask them out loud. But these people don't have to be personally connected to you to feel an urge to reach out to them. And if you're Michael Stipe, you might even write a hit song about it. This line doesn't need much analysis. Kaufman got a fair amount of mileage from his pretty funny, pretty impressive Elvis impersonation. It was silly and fun, and Andy seemed to enjoy doing it. Some things are done for the simple pleasure of doing them, which is a sufficient motivation for most things.
Half of the show, baby.
The last line of the pre-chorus, "Are we losing touch?" restores ambiguity, and it's haunting. Michael could be asking this question directly to Andy regarding their connection, as in, "Can you still hear me, Andy?" Or he might be airmailing that question to Andy for us. It feels like Michael is asking Andy, that master prankster from beyond, for an expert's opinion on whether humankind has lost the ability to tell fact from fiction in an increasingly deceptive world.
Are we losing touch?
Well, are we?
History shouldn't be a mystery. Our story's real history, not his story. We're going to work it out one day.
Our power of belief is what makes stories real, in quotes. And real should be in quotes, because we're talking about subjective reality versus objective reality. And those two things ain't the same. While whether or not we can perceive objective reality is a fun topic, it's not our topic for today. But as people increasingly sail toward the digitally curated realities of their own bias and imagination, we'll be facing an increasing number of these so-called realities to consider and contend with. The foundational divide is, and will remain among, believers and skeptics, and more importantly, among those that want to believe and those that want to disbelieve. The believers will make real the stories they're offered, and the skeptics will not. The first lines of the chorus that were first shown together are now split apart to better demonstrate the two ways you can hear this lyric. The first way can be processed straightforwardly enough as, if you believed that they put a man on the moon, followed by some conclusion. If you believed, then you're this, or then you're that, etc. But it's more compelling to process this line as split pairs. Hearing it this way points to the ability to create reality from belief, as opposed to belief from reality. In other words, If you believed in the moon landing story, then and only then did the moon landing happen in the way you were told. By accepting it, you made it real, at least in your mind. Again, we're talking about subjective belief. And since many of us live almost exclusively in our heads, that belief is very hard to deny and makes for powerful illusions and dogmatic certainty. The next line is a kind of guilt or suspicion by association. Did Michael Stipe just compare the 1969 Apollo moon mission to the stagecraft of a magician? Does a bear crap in the woods? Bad example. They might crap by the woods or near a stream. Who knows? Let's try again. Do politicians lie? Absolutely. The proximity of these lines in the chorus echoes Stipe's suspicions over that uniquely American sacred cow. It was kind of ballsy to suggest such a thing in '92. And thanks to the power of belief, it remains so today. In the song's first verse, Stipe undermined religious claims when he seemingly mocked the idea of a salvational list. But that was less biting, because in America, attacking religious claims hasn't been edgy in, like, forever. But attacking the new religion of scientific/political lore, that'll raise some objections as to your sanity. You can divide people into two camps. Those who want to know how the trick works, because they prefer knowledge over mystery, and those that don't, because they prefer mystery over knowledge. The latter are those that don't want to lose the magic. Do you want to live in ignorance because you're dazzled by spectacle or are afraid of the unknown? That's a choice. And this brings us to the chorus's final line, and to Michael Stipe's usage of the word cool, which implies quite a bit.
Nothing is cool.
Stipe uses the informal slang definition of cool in the chorus, and it creates an interesting dichotomy. When I first heard Man on the Moon back in the day, I was under the mistaken impression that the chorus was trying to say that skeptics don't have any fun. But the more I listened, the more it seemed that Stipe didn't mean cool as in fun, but cool as in okay. Is everything all right? Is everything okay? Is everything cool? And upon further review, I'm of the opinion that Stipe intended cool to refer to something much more fundamental, our stable foundation of objective reality, the reality we all ultimately rely on because it is objective and true. And without it, nothing's okay or cool. So how we define cool as a slang term matters a lot here. And by using it the way he does, Stipe manages to cram even more ambiguity into a song already loaded with it.
Wait! There's more!
The downside to believing things that aren't real is the downside of relinquishing degrees of control over your mind and life to courses of action that are destructive over time. This does not apply to beliefs that have been personally vetted by direct knowledge. False beliefs are superstitions that seem real, and despite images of black cats and tinfoil hats, they apply powerfully to media-fed narratives as well, maybe more so.
You believe in things you don't understand and you suffer.
The upside to false beliefs is fitting in and a sense of security. Again, it may seem cool if we're talking about being popular and trendy, but ultimately, nothing could be less cool. The downside of skepticism, or outright disbelief, is more immediate and personal. It's nothing less than social isolation and potential ridicule, whether it's deserved or not. When you realize that the magician is lying, and when that magician happens to be the media, then things are actually pretty f***ed up, because it changes or destroys everything you thought was true. Destruction of familiar, comforting beliefs and loss of communal connection is the price of knowledge and understanding. Whether you're right or wrong, when you see and realize things that others don't, you realize how utterly alone you are. And you might even choose to bullshit yourself rather than face it.
I don't want to remember nothing. Nothing. You understand? Ignorance is bliss.
We have rock-caught sea bass, albacore and pickerel, sand dab, yellowtail, tuna fish and mackerel, bluefish, sailfish, top and if you wish, swordfish, whitefish, herring and gefilte fish. And that ain't all.
I'll spend a little less time on verse 2. It's simply a series of historical references and tales that move the song along nicely. But the choices Stipe picks reveals the sophistication and, more importantly, fair-mindedness of his presentation. All of the lines in the second verse are sacred cows that are defended by different camps. Stipe is being even-handed in his skepticism, and he's indicting and uniting these camps by the intensity of their particular dogma. These camps may not want to think that they're the same, but in this way, they certainly are. It's not the things that the fanatics of science or religion believe in that unifies them or makes them off-putting, but in their arrogant tendency to insist that they're exclusively right. Most everyone does this from time to time, but the test of a person's ideological maturity is whether or not they're willing to acknowledge that their beliefs are just that. Despite the secondhand evidence of test tubes and testimonies, we all proceed through life without proof. And by any other name, that's faith. When we regurgitate the claims of pastors or scientists that we have not personally validated ourselves, we proceed not under God or science, but under our belief in another person's sales pitch, which may or may not be truthful. In refining our beliefs, we are seeking the truth that we don't have. I'm doing it, and you might be too. If ultimate truth is to be found, it probably won't be found in this life.
I won't get what I'm after till the day I die.
Getting back to this verse, we can appreciate how Stipe avoids picking on either side. It's easier to accept criticism of the things you favor when the critic shows a willingness to expose the flaws in its rival camp as well. Doing this reveals that a critic's principles extend beyond self-serving loyalties, and that their bias doesn't prevent them from applying their analytical skills to their own ideas. Whether it's Moses in Egypt or Isaac Newton under a tree, these two particular speculative episodes are similar in that they are not supported by modern, credible forms of evidence. Their legitimacy, owed to the passage of time, simply won't be established. Even if historical record could account for the Newton tale, it remains more evidentiary than factual. The stuff of legend. The final two examples in the second verse repeat the pattern. The asp, or troublesome, poisonous snake of the region being referred to, could be a biblical or historical reference, but the distinction doesn't seem terribly important in either case. However, the choice to include Charles Darwin as the final example of the second verse is an inspired one that's ripe for the picking, considering how science fanatics have turned him and the theory of evolution into a cult-like belief system that, as presented, boasts of accounting for perhaps a bit more than it should be given credit for.
Here's a little edge for the never believer. Yeah.
Agit is short for agitprop, or agitation propaganda, which was Soviet-era government propaganda, a topic of its own. Today, agitprop is used loosely to refer to art propaganda, or art with a political or social message attached, which makes this line a self-referential one. So with this line, Stipe's intention is made clear. This is a song, or at least a line, for the skeptics of the world, those who don't blindly accept stories from religious or scientific communities. And who could be against that?
Nope. Here's a little ghost for the offering.
I found this little ghost line harder to make sense of, and needed some background to clear it up. A user named Tadley on the Songfacts website posted a note about an old children's board game from the early 1960s called The Little Ghost. Given Stipe's age, this could be something he came across in his youth or heard of. Or not. The commentator, as well as myself, are not convinced whether or not this is what Stipe was referring to. My thought about this line before coming across this user's comment was that the ghost is simply another way of representing an opposing idea that you might have about something. These alternative explanations may be plausible, but seem a bit faint because they're not supported by media propaganda or physical proof, which means they'll be dismissed because they're not fully realized or fleshed out, if you don't mind the pun. Ghosts, whether as an idea or a reality, are by their nature things to be doubted or refused by those that have not encountered them directly. In this way, conspiracies and counter-narratives are little ghosts of their own, and Stipe is offering up this one for us.
You're insane, John.
Wrong! I'm perfectly sane. Everyone else, however, is insane and trying to steal my magic bag.
Here's a truck stop instead of St. Peter's.
The truck stop serves as a surrogate for cold, hard, functional reality. And St. Peter's Basilica is our stand-in for outwardly beautiful presentation, and again, spectacle. While spectacle and substance are not mutually exclusive, presentations can certainly, and are certainly, often proportioned in a way that renders them empty calories, so to speak. But truth needn't be adorned with anything. The truck stop doesn't have to justify its existence by being pretty or showing off stained glass and gold leaf. It has real utility, and if it stops working, things stop happening. This is the religion of practical reality, and in this line of our third verse, Stipe severs the practical from the performative, functionality from formality, and substance over spectacle. In doing so, despite his equal opportunity sniping, Stipe appears to indicate his personal preference. And because he's sufficiently objective, it's hard to be mad at him for it, especially when it's offered as poetically as this.
Mr. Andy Kaufman's gone wrestling.
The last line directs the ambiguity back at Kaufman in a way that's poignant and beautiful. The implications baked into this final verse may point back to us as well, connecting all human beings that believe in a purpose to our existence. Restating an earlier point, there were whispers and rumors that Andy faked his own death. And given the stunts Kaufman pulled and liked to pull, those suspicions were understandable. Following the funeral, might Andy have been running around somewhere, playing his little wrestling-like games? Or was the hiding a game itself? Maybe Andy, arguably the craziest method actor of our time, chose to vanish from the spotlight with a boss-level kayfabe prank. And if so, that's a hell of a story. But maybe he just died. And that's a story too. And if he did, in fact, die, which seems a near certainty, then Andy, like any other soul in the afterlife, might have found himself reviewing the footage of his earthly existence and wrestling with the choices he made. And in contemplating the facts that were given from storytellers and squaring them with our direct, personal, but limited experiences, we too wrestle with information and reality. Wrestling, as the final word in the final verse,
Mr. Andy Kaufman's gone wrestling.
Ties a neat little bow on REM's Man on the Moon, and on this video as well. Here's hoping we all continue evolving along our earthly and spiritual paths. Two paths which are essentially merged anyway. Because wherever you happen to fall on the spectrum of belief on a particular topic, it's functionally valid to your story, understanding, and time. And despite the inevitable tragedies and travails that will visit us, it's all good in the end. That's my story, anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.